Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of CCC Talks with Mark O'Loughlin and the Cloud Credential Council. Now, today we're joined by Muriel Schepper, who is an AI expert at Applied AI and is also a psychologist. So, Muriel, thank you very much for joining us on today's podcast.
Happy to be here.
Fantastic. Now, Muriel, you describe yourself as a psychologist. It's very interesting, who entered the world of IT and data and then got really passionate about artificial intelligence. So listen, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Yeah. So I did study indeed psychology quite a while back. Yeah. And then in 2007, I believe, I joined FICO, an American analytics company that does, amongst others, fraud detection on credit card transactions. And I was fascinated by that you could just, based on transaction data, in real time block a card and make sure fraud wouldn't happen. Mm-hmm. So I've worked there for 5 years, had a lot of fun. So a lot of the things that are hot and happening now with machine learning, that was for them already normal business. It just wasn't big data and it wasn't AI, but it's actually what they already did.
Yeah.
I got passionate about that, and later I went to Rabobank and also joined their AI data science team, mm-hmm. and started focusing on AI. And I think the thing that I like is that why I probably am passionate about it is that it's with AI you have now both the mixture of combination of IT and human coming together. And there's still a bit of it's still challenging, it's still exciting. How's it going to move? Will it be all good for us, or will it be negative, or is it somewhere in between? So there is a lot of human psychology around implementing and working with these technologies, and then this background in IT and data versus being a psychologist fits perfect for me.
I think it's a fascinating world when you put the world of IT and psychology together, because we are still human at the end of the day. We're bringing in more technology to do some of the human tasks that we've done, but we've got to evolve into a higher level of task orientation along with this. So we'll get to that in a moment. We'll get to Rabobank in a couple of minutes as well. But you're also an author. So you've co-written a book. Where'd you find the time? The book's titled Artificial Intelligence in Action. Now, I think it's only in Dutch. You can correct me on that, but tell us first a little bit.
Yes, at this moment it's only in Dutch. I got a lot of requests like, why don't you do it in English too? But I don't have the time for that.
There's AI translation machines out there where you could put it in and it will do a good job.
Yeah. Well, I don't trust them yet.
Now, that's an interesting point we may come back to. Tell us a little bit about what's in the book, Artificial Intelligence in Action. What have you covered there briefly?
Yeah, well, actually, just to take you back, how this is originated is that actually when I left Rabobank, I felt that I had some experience in this new field of AI in companies, and got some knowledge that I want to share, because every time I came to a new client, I noticed that there is these tremendously high expectations of what AI can do, and there's a knowledge of hardly anything. So it's completely not realistic what people are expecting. And so I thought, well, I do have the knowledge, I want to share it. So I started creating a training program about that. And then in November 2018, I gave that training for the first time. And then after that, I was like, well, actually, the whole training is sort of like a book. So it's sort of like each block in the training is a chapter. So I went to a publishing agency, and they said, great, when are you going to publish it? And then I said, well, June 2019. There it was.
So as if you have nothing else to do, we'll throw a book in on top of it. But I think...
it was. I always say it's the first and only book. Now, and it is just about sharing my experiences about what is AI, explaining it in simple terms, so that people who haven't studied statistics or aren't a data scientist understand what it is, get a lot of examples of what you can do with it, and then help them get started to find their own business cases and validate if the idea that they have come up with is realistic, and if they have
Yes.
taken all the right steps and involved the right people to move it forward and create something which is success, which means that you are able to create value and not just do an innovation project with AI, which never ends into production, so which is completely useless.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing here, Muriel, is that the Dutch should have a lead on AI based on this information, because it's not published in English yet. So hurry up and publish in English, and
Yeah.
let the Dutch
I'll ask the publisher if they can
lead
do
on it.
something about it.
But
Well,
to
we're
me,
actually at this moment, we're on the long list for management book of the year 2020. So who knows?
fantastic. That's fantastic. And I think because I'd be eager to read this, or am I trying, is because you're saying, look, this is information from the coal face. This is information from somebody that's seen it rather than the
Yeah.
theoretical stuff. And you started
Yeah.
by saying, I mean, your introduction here was, the expectation of organizations is high, but the capability is low. And we expect that.
And the knowledge is
Our
low.
knowledge. Organizations think, from my experience, is sure we'll just start using an AI system and that will solve what we're trying to do with AI, which is not the way to do it
It's going
whatsoever.
to predict something which we have never seen before, and we've never predicted before.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's not
Now,
how it works.
a simple question, and probably because of the book, because of your experience, but I'm going to ask you this simple question. We'll see where the answer goes, is how would you describe AI, artificial intelligence, in simple terms? What is
Yeah.
AI?
Well, how I always, because as you know, AI is like, if you look on the internet, you can find 20 different definitions.
Of course.
So I do have my own. And how I like to describe it is as a toolbox. So in a normal toolbox, you have a hammer, a screwdriver, a saw, etc. And all these tools can do something. And with AI, you also have a toolbox. Within this toolbox, there are all kinds of tools that try to mimic a form of human intelligence. And some tools can do something with speech, others can do something with vision, others can do something with written text or predict things, etc. And so it's a box with all these tools. And in order to get in a normal toolbox something moving, you need like a craftsman or a plumber. And with AI, what you need an algorithm. And that algorithm can do make that the tool is going to work. And that can be a very complex algorithm, some neural network, or something very simple if then. And that's sort of like how I like to describe what AI is.
I like that. I think it's simple enough. It's easy enough. I think you're describing what it is. As you said, it does these things, but it's still got that level of craft required to it, and then leading into the algorithm there. Can I ask
Yeah, and then with the word algorithm, that's also a word that everybody uses, but nobody has a clue what it is. But nobody dares to say what is an algorithm actually. So let me just explain.
Let me ask, what is an algorithm, please?
Yes. So what is an algorithm? So you can say it's a way to come in a more complex way from a situation A to B, and it tells you the exact steps what to undertake. Yeah. But how I like to explain it more easily is actually, if you're going to cook something and the goal that you want to reach is an apple cake, for example. And in order to get there, you pick up a recipe and it says, first take apples and cut them in pieces, then take the sugar, then take whatever, that. And by following all these steps in the recipe, you end up in the end by the cake. So you have a goal you want to reach, and there's a description of how to reach that. That is an algorithm. And if you go to IKEA and you buy a new cupboard or anything, you get this booklet, this leaflet, and it says in pictures what to do to come from these parts into a cupboard. It tells you exactly what to do to come from A to B. That is also an algorithm. tough. Computers, and with AI computers, it's quite often also a mathematical formula, but that is also, it tells you which steps to take to come from A to B, and that's an algorithm.
I think that's clear. So we've gone from AI to apple pie and off to IKEA.
Yes.
I wouldn't have made any of those links before this call, but it's clear, very clear to me now. The one challenge I have with the IKEA algorithm is not so much the algorithm. The pictures are fine. It's in my execution of the algorithm. Normally something is broke or left over, but that's I'm the
that's
challenge.
another discussion.
I'm the challenge in that case. Now, Muriel, I was going to ask him, how old is AI? I mean, is this a recent thing? Is it the last 5, 10 years since cloud?
No. It started more than 70 years ago. It already started. Hey, you had Alan Turing already wondering why are our machines intelligent and how are we going to measure that? So there's the Turing test, which is still nowadays known. Yeah. But how it started was around 90. The term itself, I believe, was 1956. It was proposed at a Dartmouth conference. Yep. Where all these bright guys at that time only were sitting, and they came up with the term artificial intelligence. And in these beginning years, they were really trying to beat, try if the machine could beat a human in games, like what's the word? It's not only chess, but also with the black and white
drafts.
chip. Sorry.
Drafts.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So they were trying to do that. So they were trying to see if a machine would be capable to do something which for a human is complex, which you need to think strategically, etc., etc. And they were very optimistic. They thought, well, within a few years, we'll probably get to the level of human intelligence. They were a little bit wrong. And that was the old AI, the good old-fashioned AI. And what we now see is completely different AI. Mm-hmm. And what we're now trying to do, say since the 2000s, is not trying to do tasks only that are difficult for humans. No, we're trying to make machines do tasks which are easy for us. Speaking, reading, seeing. I don't need to do anything complex to see. I just can do it. Yes. The simple human tasks, that are the ones that are most complex for machines, and that's what we're working on nowadays.
Yeah, and I think that's
but
interesting.
It's not new.
It's not new, and that's a big learning, I think, for organizations and people, that it's not new. You can trace it back many years. You can look at the thought process from 30, 40, 50, 60 years and still apply it to today. But we have this newer technology to do AI differently. And I think the advent of cloud that gave us huge amount of processing power and all sorts of other technologies to do things different. And I think that's the key. So
it's actually a couple of things. So it's indeed the processing power that we have now, and which is also cheaper than it used to be and smaller. Yes. And it's the amount of data. I mean, if you go back to the 80s, what kind of data did we have? We didn't have phones or we didn't do any online transactions. You didn't have the data per se. And so the thing is machine learning. So even though we have some algorithms now that were already created in the past, we couldn't use them because we just didn't have the data and the power. Yeah. And the fourth is indeed the effect of the cloud, making it able to have that processing power everywhere, but also having all companies like an IBM and Microsoft putting all these sort of like AI services in the cloud, so everyone can reach it, and everyone can use it. And you just go on YouTube to figure out how it works. So it's sort of like the democratization of AI. Everyone can get going. If you're a kid, if you're 80, if you're in Africa or in the Netherlands, it's there. And I will say, I can use it. I can train myself a neural network with Azure machine learning. I'm not a data scientist, and I can't even program, but I can train a neural network. It's that simple.
So it's more accessible now. It's more accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier work you did with Rabobank, and I know you've done work with Shell and lots of other organizations since. If we look at, say, Rabobank to start with, I mean, why did they decide to use AI? What was their main goal or objective at the time? It was a couple of years ago, I think.
Yeah, so it was in the beginning of 2016, so pretty early actually.
Yeah.
And the year before that, they had started the data science team because they had, of course, heard about the trend of big data and analytics.
Yes.
So we just, at that time, it was called Advanced Analytics Team. They were just experimenting, piloting with all kinds of things. And the same was with AI. So when I joined, it was sort of like the question, so Muriel, what is AI? What do we need it for? Go ahead.
Yeah, of course, you had all the answers, of course.
Yeah, so I didn't have the answers. So my job was to understand what is it. So I did a lot of self-teaching, reading, visit loads of conferences, and also starting to try out things. Start all kinds of projects with chatbots, with physical robots, with text understanding information in text. And we had the opportunity to do so, and also to inspire people and tell people in the organization what it's all about. So there was this playing field, and based on also this experience, and also what we did in the AI project, is I really learned from the data team that they were already a year working when I got there, and also 2 years later, nothing was in production. So I said, that's not what I want. That's not adding value. If I do something, I want to make it valuable. I want to have it in production and work. So with all the projects I did, I also made sure that every time there was someone who understood what we're going to do, who was willing to pay for it, and was willing to take it over once the project was done. In that way, to guarantee that we could end up with something. And that's quite often what misses in a lot of these projects, because it's the innovation department that starts with something crazy, and then it's really fun, but no one wants it.
Now, for me, there's a piece of gold for our listeners insofar as, and maybe take me through it again, that you got somebody to not only sponsor it, not just from innovation, but somebody to sponsor it, pay for it, but then own it after it goes into production, so it lives. So some other group has bought into it, whether they understand it or not. They go in the learning process with you through the development cycle.
Yes.
They're excited when they get it, and then they own it to deliver value going forward. That to me sounds like a recipe for success for that apple pie that we spoke about.
Yeah, no, but it is. So, and that's also the psychology. That's change management. That's not AI. It's change management.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, and you mentioned there, it is the change management process, which I think goes back to your background as well. How do you get people to move and understand and adopt this stuff for doing it the right way? I like that. Can I ask, so at Rabobank, just are there a few examples of how they're using it today? Are they using it more for fraud prevention, for speeding up processing claims? Any particular areas that they're using it?
So you see in chatbots, they're using chatbots for end users, but also internal purposes. So the one I implemented there was for the IT help desk. For example, but also in the process of CDD, customer due diligence. You also see more and more initiatives on starting to use AI. So it's in all different departments, and also within the HR department, for example, they have a chief HR officer, which is very visionary, I think, and she is really also trying to see how can we apply data and AI in that area for the benefit of our employees, for example.
That'll be very useful, I think. It'll be very useful over time, as we see. Now, I've heard you talk about something called an AI cell, and in relation to an AI center of excellence. Can you tell us a little bit about these terms, what they mean and what they do?
I think it's a center of expertise. We didn't call it that way because the moment that I started working on this, so it was a virtual team actually. And the moment that we started on it, 3 months later, the biggest reorganization ever happened at Rabobank.
Of course.
And we had for like 9 months, there was no manager in the team. So we decided we call it AI cell. Anybody against it? No. Okay. And we want to do these projects. Anyone against it? No. So we could just do whatever we wanted.
I like it.
And that was fantastic. But now it was fantastic because that's why I did so many different projects and in so many different parts of the bank. And I could learn a lot, but I could also help the organization move forward. My biggest learning from all of this is that after these months of having all this fun and doing all these great projects, we did get a manager. And also the innovations department also got a new manager. And they started sort of like, okay, but this AI cell, it doesn't exist in the org chart. They're doing all kind of things, but it's innovation, but it's also data. And they were sort of like struggling all these months. So fine, we just went on. Nobody was really worried, so we got off. But in the end, it wasn't fine. But because my biggest lesson learned from this was, if you do something like this with data and AI, you need to have someone at best in the top of the organization to fully commit to it and endorse it. Because you are starting to do things which could change dramatically something with clients, dramatically something with employees. And if you don't have anyone in the top of the organization understanding this and endorsing it, it will die. And that's, that didn't happen because at the time I was there, but then I decided to start on my own. So I left and it died. And now 2 years later, things come back again.
Yes.
I think, but it's in that sense. So that's my biggest learning. If you work with these fascinating technologies, you need to have someone who understands it and is willing to fully commit to it.
I have a question on that later on. We'll come to it later on. But I think for projects like this, as you said, or projects, initiatives, whatever they are, somebody at the top needs to endorse it, understand it, get funding for it. And we'll talk about who that might be later on. Because if you don't, as you said, it will lose that momentum later on.
Yeah.
But a challenge to a lot of organizations is in finding somebody to endorse it, fund it, and promote it, probably because of a lack of understanding what it could be or a lack of understanding how it can deliver value. Because it's not easy, I don't think. It can be difficult because, as you said, you're innovating, you're learning, you're developing, you're trialing. You may fail at certain things, but I do like this agile approach to fail fast, move on, try something. Like what you said, it sounds to me like there was a bunch of chefs in a kitchen that they didn't own, didn't run, that turned up and started cooking lots of different things.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there was always a client.
Of course. You mentioned that.
Yes, and that was the big difference. And that client that was in the case were managers. And what I learned is you need to have, in order to really be successful, you need to have a manager who has some guts.
Yes.
Because they are starting a project which likely is to fail.
Yeah.
Or is not going to give the results that you expect in moment one. But still someone who says, yes, but this is the future. I believe in it. And we need to fail maybe a couple of times. But in the end, if we do this, we will get it right. And so for example, with the chatbot that we implemented, there was this manager and he said, okay, I understand if we do this, probably our customer satisfaction score will go down for a couple of months, weeks.
Yes.
But hey, we need to do this. This is the next step in our process of automating things and this. So I accept that, even though I get in the end of the year, my bonus will be based on this customer satisfaction. But I believe we need to do this for the long run. I have the guts. I have trust in the team, and I give them the freedom to execute the way they believe is best. And that works. But these are rare.
I think some good recommendations there. We're going to dig them out into a blog later on. But as you said, finding the manager with guts to do this is rare at the moment, but we need to see more of this and change the thinking. As you said, take a hit. A short-term hit today might be the best thing to do for medium and long term, and actually might get you some form of competitive advantage. And they're the things we need to look at, which I think is different. And it goes into the psychology of why we do these and how people perform and deal with these technologies, I think. Can I ask, in your view, is AI a disruptor technology? I mean, do you need to be using AI to be a disruptor in various industries today? Or is it an enhancing technology, or is it a bit of both?
I think it's a bit of both. And
Right.
and what I actually see, and I get more and more convinced about, is that because currently I'm doing an assignment at a municipality, I don't know, in the Netherlands, city in the Netherlands. I work for them, and I'm doing they want to become more data driven.
Of course.
And I'm not talking with them about AI.
Yes.
Yet. I just first say, okay, let's figure out what the situation is currently. Let's not do that because we think this is based on our expertise, the situation. No, let's get facts. Let's just get a dashboard. Get BI information about what's going on right now. Because if you don't know what's going on right now, why do you want to predict?
Yes.
What are you going to predict? So we're really focusing on that, and then in a couple of months or maybe years, it depends how fast it goes, you will ask this question, okay, now I know why, what's going on, and I understand a bit why. Let's now predict what is going to happen next year. Yes. And so it's a next step. And yes, you can do all this fancy stuff with AI, but if you don't know what's going on right now, I wouldn't recommend it.
Fantastic. I mean, this is really good stuff, really good recommendations here. I like this. I'm gonna take note of this later on. Before AI, do some BI. I mean, to get to understand the what's going on and to get to that question why, then apply artificial intelligence to do something about that. So before AI, BI. That's a really good message. We're gonna do some work on that. I think we'll come back on that. I think it was really good and so simple. It can be so simple.
It is, and it's to be honest, it is all simple if you just take a step back and try to translate everything in simple words. And it's also simple if you understand what you're talking about.
Yes.
Things are simple. The problem is a lot of people are talking about things they haven't got a clue. As I said, they say algorithm, they have no clue what it is. They say AI, they don't know what it is. And if you don't know what it is, you can't come up with good ideas either.
Yes, yeah, we see that with all the various technologies, especially all this new digital stuff, that the first fundamental question to ask is, what is this? And let's get a collective understanding. As you said, there could be 20 definitions of AI. Let's understand what it means for us in this organization, but it could be different for another one. Good. Along with AI, we hear a lot of talk about this thing called RPA, robot process automation. Right. Now, is there a link between RPA and AI, or maybe tell us a little bit about robot process automation and artificial intelligence? What's that all about?
No, well, actually, I do know some about it, not because I've done it, these projects, but at the same time, as I started in 2016, the AI cell, there was another group of people that said, well, RPA, that sounds interesting. Let's play around with it. So at the same time as I was doing my AI cell, there was also an initiative of 3 guys doing something with RPA.
Yes, yeah.
And in the time, I also went to a lot of conferences, and these conferences were always RPA and AI. And it was 80-90% RPA and maybe 10% AI. Yep. So that's how it started. And so it's great technology because it helps to automate more the manual task behind the computer, stuff where you don't really have to think about, but more only have to move about with your hands. And I think that has been very successful and delivered a lot of value for a lot of companies because there's still a lot of manual, simple tasks. And I actually think that, and that I already thought that, and it's happening now too, is that RPA can be the enabler of the rollout of AI in companies. And why? Because and especially the large companies, they have been, what I told you, an AI cell or a center of expertise, and they have been doing all these fancy pilots, nothing in production. So everyone like, what's the value? Huh? Costs a lot of money, all these bright guys there, but what does it deliver? On the other hand, there were these RPA guys that said, "Hey, well, let's simplify this process." And there were 10 people working on it. Now we have one robot, so big savings in the company. And they done these simple processes, and now they're like, "Oh, well, but in this simple process, there's a human who needs to make a decision, or needs to view a document and say yes, this is correct or not." Well, that can't RPA do. So, well, there's something AI that is able to do that. Let's see if we can plug AI into RPA. Well, also the RPA vendors have seen this, so they've come up with cognitive automation, intelligent automation, whatever they call it. And that is the combination of RPA and AI. And because these projects have been so successful, it saved money for the company. So the top of the organization is really happy with these people in these center of expertise is doing that job. They will probably, when these guys say, well, actually, let's give it a try with AI, they will say, wow, let's give it a try. They have been successful in the past. Why not now? So move on. Well, these guys in the AI center are like, oh, that's really big results. So I think they will be the enabler of AI in companies.
I think so. As I said, it seems to be a little bit easier to do the robot process automation. It's a little bit more on the automation side, which is good. Use that, and maybe that's how you get AI into an organization. Look at RPA first, and with the mindset of, if we do this right and get the backing, we're likely to get the backing to do something with AI. But let's start think about where this artificial intelligence might take us as well. I like that. It's very interesting. And we can see where we go. Now, over time, I mean, we hear a little bit about this. We've done some surveys. Our recent global digital skills survey looked at the people side regarding all things digital. And one of the things we looked at was, the fear. Is there a fear among people in their jobs that these technologies will replace their jobs? So, for an example, do you think people should be afraid that AI will replace their jobs, or are we looking at this the wrong way? Could AI lead to, it might replace some jobs, but it creates higher value jobs for people to do because it does the base level that they do. Do we look at it the wrong way? Should we fear it, or should we embrace it because of the potential it could lead to?
Yeah, I think we should embrace it because what I've seen so far, and I also believe that if you are starting it that way, you are the most successful. If try to find use cases where people have too much work on their plate. There's high stress levels, they can't do the jobs. And if you can take away the more simple task from them, that's also where machines are probably good at. And these are quite often also the questions or the tasks that come back quite often. If you do this, you take stress away from them, and they're more than happy to embrace this new technology because it actually helps them and gives them the chance to do more advanced work or more intelligent work or spend more time with their clients, for example. And I don't think it will replace complete jobs. It will replace certain tasks in jobs. And so it will just give more space in the end. If it does advance more, in maybe 5-10 years, if this really goes on, maybe then there will be less people needed to do a specific task. So yes, there will be people at risk. Also with the automation, with the RPA, for example. So it's not only AI, it's also RPA and other technologies. So yes, there will be people at risk. On the other hand, we will get new jobs too. The question is, will the people who will lose their job be the ones that are able to re-educate and do these new jobs? And that I'm worried about. The only thing what you can do is make sure that everyone becomes aware of what's going on with RPA, with AI, with all these new technologies, and this fourth industrial revolution that we're in. that
Yes.
people are aware of it, and that you help them educate and prepare. And if you don't want to do that, don't look weird if your job is gone at a certain moment. But it's not that something happening now or in 5 years, but in the long run, yes.
That's in the
On the
long
other
run.
hand, we're in countries like the Netherlands, the population is becoming older and older. We don't have enough youth as workforce, so we probably will need the technology to keep up with the level of how we produce and service everyone. So it's probably needed.
It is. We find it interesting. Technology will evolve. We've seen this in manufacturing years ago. A lot of job displacement because of machines that came in and did a lot of the manufacturing. But out of that developed the services industry. Now out of this, I think we're developing some kind of knowledge industry where we get the AI to do, as you said, the more routine tasks. And we're in the middle of this, we call it the fourth industrial revolution, whatever it is, where there will be job displacement, I think. And again, from our survey, we found that organizations, I think, are now looking today and into the future for people that can acquire new skills quickly. That's one of our critical findings, as opposed to coming in with skills that will last them a career.
Yeah.
Well, I think those days are gone. So I think it is incumbent on us to think about today and in the next 5 years and in the longer run. What does that mean to us as individuals, as employees, as people, to stay relevant in a workforce that is being changed? Because it's happened before. And I think if we look back at history, it will tell us some of the answers there as well.
Yeah, we still have jobs, but it is the point that but the first thing is that people need to be made aware that what's going on. And that's where already is a big gap at the moment. A lot of people are not even aware. And if you're not aware, you can't prepare. And one of the, in the Netherlands, recently, we started an initiative which is called I Am Digital. And I'm one of the trainers there as well. And what we are trying to accomplish is that we want to re-educate or help re-educate over 1 million professionals in the Netherlands in the coming 3 to 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have created a whole program where people can come on site, but also the whole e-learning track to make people aware of what's going on, what are the technologies that are going on, how does it impact you, your company, and how would you want to re-educate yourself or get more familiar with in order to stay relevant. And that is a question people need to ask in every sector, from accountancy, lawyers, doctors, energy, whatever, everywhere. And that's not happening enough. There's too many people who are unaware what's going on around them.
I think that the I Am Digital program sounds fascinating. We're going to look into that a little bit more. I hope more countries do that as well. And I think the key point that you said is all this is, we're talking about AI and technology. It's not just the technology sector that's impacted by job displacement or change. It's everybody. I think it's incumbent for us all to think about that. Can I ask, so AI, so we said with AI, we need a lot of data. But with data comes the word privacy and protections and all this. So how are organizations addressing the requirements regarding data privacy and protection? Because there's so much data now, and I'm sure it's not just in one place, it's in one source. It's a lot of data, a lot of different repositories. How are they dealing with some of those data protection challenges? I won't say issues, I'll say challenges.
How are they dealing with that? Well, I think the fact that we have this data protection now since, 2018, wasn't it? In May 2018 or something. At least people are aware of it. There's something called privacy. And there's been a lot of
privacy thing, yeah.
So there's a lot of more awareness than a couple of years ago about what to do. And there's privacy officers and there's procedures for data leaks and everything. So that I think is becoming more, people are more aware of. But I think there's another question, which is more interesting now, is that I always say there's three things. When you start a project, there are three things to do. One is you need to ask, are we able to do it?
Yes.
The second thing is, are we allowed to do it? Yeah?
Yes.
And then there's this privacy comes into play. But the third thing, which is as important, do we want to do this?
Fantastic.
So it's the ethical question. And so first there was a lot of attention for data privacy, and now you see a lot of attention also from the European Union or the European Commission and all kinds of other institutions all around the globe about ethical guidelines. So do we want this? What is the impact in the long run? Are we not biased? Are we just excluding people? What are we predicting? Is this good? And I think that's there's a lot of guidelines for that, but there's not enough attention yet for that inside companies. And I'm especially as I said, now I work, so I'm now doing projects in the government space, and so I see a lot of different things going on, and I'm a bit not shocked maybe about the unawareness and the not ignorance. That's not a good word. Unawareness of these subjects, and that people just do things without thinking it through, and that concerns me.
I think it's a lack of awareness. I think is what you're coming at there. I think that's critical, especially
it's
with
not
data
intentional.
As well.
It's just they've never asked these questions, and nobody asked these questions to them.
Yes.
And so you can't even blame them.
And we do generally have a culture of, if I don't ask the question, I don't expose something we don't know about as well. So we've got to get past that, because data privacy and protection of people's data is, as you said, it's on, at least in the EU agenda. But on a global scale, it comes down to trust. If organizations lose the trust of their customers because they mishandle their data, whether it's from AI or whatever it's from, that can lead to reputational damage and loss of customer and all this kind of stuff. So it can be very, very severe. And I think companies are still a little bit behind in that thinking, but it is changing. It is changing. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Muriel, we're coming up to the end, but what we normally do at this stage is I'm going to do some quick fire questions with you, right? So I'm just going to put out a few statements. We'll see how you want to tackle these. Okay, these to be good. So first question: is AI overhyped? What do you think?
It is.
Fantastic. Are chatbots reducing the need for staff at frontline services, for example, service desks and contact centers? Do we see that happening?
Yes, I think they will be of use, but not as they will take over the high volume, simple tasks and questions, and leaves the more complicated work to the staff in the call centers.
Exactly. And a follow-on question to that, and this is from personal experience, having recently used a couple of chatbots to deal with some customer service challenges I've had to report. Are chatbots doing a good job in general, or are they deployed, let's say, inefficiently?
I think in general they're not good enough, because you need to because what the thing is, when you as a company, if you want a chatbot, you need to very good understand how the technology works. So what kind of questions can you use it for? Yes. And so these bots can be used best for high volume, simple questions in a very small domain.
Yes.
So if you have loads of different questions being asked by customers in many different domains, don't get started. Or create a chatbot, which is very specific, and then also the user understands that you can only ask about how to return a product and not about anything else. Yes. So put it on the web page where it's about product returns and nothing else.
Yes.
So you need to, also there it's psychology, you need to understand that what is the user expecting, and make sure that the bot makes clear to the user what is being expected of, and also understand people do not read. So people are also not that intelligent. So you can put all kinds of words and things there about what this bot is about. And also say, I'm the virtual agent. And then after I've seen it in tests and evaluation, people say, huh? Am I not talking to a human? Well, there's in big letters, I'm this virtual agent.
Yes.
Well, so it's very hard. We are people are hard to deal with the machines, but the trick is for a good bot is to make it work, that you understand the human and make it work so that the human and the human machine cooperation goes well.
Love it. Understand the human to make it work. I think that's really good. Now, is this by the by? I'll talk to you after.
Oh yeah, and one thing. Okay. I just always need to say this. Never ever let any of your developers write text that is going to be answered by the bot. Always take someone who can read and who can write text, a conversational text writer.
We love developers. We have great time for developers. But do you hear that, developers? Never, ever write the text for a chatbot. You can't do it. That's it. Leave it to somebody else. We'll get somebody else to do it, but not the developers. You go develop chatbot for us, but here's what we want it to say. I love it. Now, as I said, by the by, because I had some experience in the last couple of weeks with some chatbots which were terrible. I'll tell you after the call who that was. You may offer some consulting services to those companies. Sounds like they're going to need it. Can I ask you, Muriel, is AI a journey or a destination?
It's a journey, and it starts, as I said, it starts with BI, it starts with data, getting that right, understanding it, and then moving to more advanced things. And so it's a journey.
Good. Now, using AI will cost the organization a lot of money. True or false? False. Okay. Any particular reason?
I think it's false because if you find the right business case and you understand how you can reach it, and you have the data available, you can do it efficiently, and you don't need months and months of high costly data scientists in your company. If you're smart about it, you can get it for cheap.
Yeah. So
especially with all these startups and all these possibilities on the cloud with all these different vendors offering this sort of like cognitive services which are already there. So, but you need to know that these exist and you need to be smart about it. And you need some guys or girls in your organization who like to play around with technology like that.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Another way of kind of rephrasing that might be, don't look at it as a sunk cost investment. Look at how you will deliver some value from it. And it changes that conversation away from losing money or costing money to delivering value. And it can be that simple.
And also like what I did when I also did some projects at Shell, and we were first with this new AI technology, and we were getting these vendors in with like hourly rates, which are like what? But okay, they have this specific knowledge. But what I did is at moment one, I said, okay, we have some guys in India, let's put them on the team, and they will be learning on the job. So after a couple of months, they were able to do it themselves because they learned from these expensive consultants. And now they have these cheap resources in-house. So also make sure you're not dependent of external consultants, but build up your own skills and find the people who want to learn these skills. Because for sure, if you have an IT department, which every company has, there are guys who are playing around with that stuff at home. Absolutely. They want to do this on their job too.
Absolutely, and find them and elevate them. So use the consultants, maybe tap into their knowledge as a short-term way of getting knowledge into the organization. That way you keep the knowledge in-house and develop it and develop people. And that's what we want, as we're saying. We want people to develop with this new technology to do new jobs and new roles, but we have to do that. And I think it just came back to that may not be seen as a cost if you sell it right. It's an investment. And we know investments come from different budgets or money buckets or whatever than the operational cost stuff. and you tap into those. Good.
Oh, let's not get into stuff like this because that's another call.
That's another call entirely altogether. Two final questions. Who owns the AI project in an organization? Could it be the CIO, the CEO, the CFO? Could it be any of those? Any recommendations there? Should it be at that level?
Well, there should be endorsement at that level. They should understand what it is and understand how to what it entails to do a project like this. The ownership should be with the person who is going to have the benefit of the tool.
Fantastic.
That's the person who says, I want it, I'm going to take care of it once it's there, when it's in production, I'm going to maintain it, and I'll put money in it, and I'll take the risk.
Fantastic. And in some cases, that's some kind of business owner. As you said, that could be HR, that could be a line of business, that could be somebody customer facing. It could be the service desk manager with a chatbot or something like that. Fantastic. So find the right owner that will do it, but have endorsement from the C-suite. Final question, Muriel. Agile is better than waterfall for managing the introduction of AI into an organization. What do you think? How do you feel on that?
Well, I would say in principle, I agree. I love the Agile approach because you work, you do something, you fail, and you can start something new. But we've actually done a comparison of different chatbots and with two different vendors. One came in with the Agile approach and the other came in with the waterfall approach. And we were first like, oh, the waterfall, how old-fashioned. Why the hell do they go waterfall? But hey, it's the race. They can do it if they want it, fine. In the end, the waterfall project was way more successful. Why? They had done this already 20 times. They knew what to do. They said, first we need to do this, then this, and this. Takes so many weeks, so we do waterfall. The other one had never ever done a project. So they were much better off doing it Agile because they didn't have a clue how to do it. So Agile's perfect. So if you know perfectly well what to do, go with waterfall. If you're still trying to figure out, Agile's perfect. So it depends on the situation.
Muriel, I have to say that's gold. We're going to do a bit more. We're going to write a little bit about that because I agree with you. I think it's use the method that's appropriate to the situation. Sometimes it's Agile, sometimes it's waterfall. A great example here. We're going to use this somehow. As you said, this company did it 20 times. They had their approach. Here it was. It was in this old-fashioned method, which actually succeeded. Where the new folks use Agile because they were inventing it as they went along. So where did you get the results from? I think that's a fantastic answer. I think that's a great ending. Now, Muriel, we're going to finish, but any final words on how AI can continue to change our lives and business? Any final thoughts?
Oh, well, that's the word.
Isn't it just? All the other questions just set you up for that one.
So how is AI going to change? Sorry.
Maybe our lives or our business. Just an example, maybe. Our lives going to get better because of AI? Does it get more complex? Does it introduce more data challenges? Our business is going to sell more and do more? Or is it
in a way, it's going to make our lives more easy, but I don't have a clear answer. There will be positives and there will be negatives, and that's the situation. I mean, if I, for example, already look at my kids, in a way, they are so easy. They just, since they were born, they are behind a tablet. They actually don't need to write anymore because they speak to machines. But yeah, would it be a loss if we can't write anymore? I don't know. Or is that just very good? On the other hand, I'm constantly bored with them being on these machines and I want to get them off. There's good things, bad things. The coming couple of years, we will see small changes and we will accept things or we will reject things. And in the end, it will take a flight. It is unstoppable. We won't stop this development, and it will become smarter and smarter, this AI.
Yes.
If it's all be good, I don't know.
We don't
Some
know.
people will be very happy with it, and others will maybe have terrible lives.
I think that's as far as we can answer. It's as far as we can see. As you said, it's a balance, and let's see what happens. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Muriel Schepper, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an eye opener. We've got some really good nuggets today, and we look forward to talking again. So, Muriel, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.